ladies and gentlemen. Today I am talking about my top 10 favorite action films of all time. As always, here are a few honorable mentions that were just short of making the cut for this list. And the biggest note of all, this is a list that is always ever changing. It is never set in stone, but this is how I feel about these films right now at this current moment, and I really want to share my feelings and thoughts about these movies with you guys. So let's get started. Number 10 on my list is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, directed by Ang Lee. This movie is one of those films that I saw when I was growing up, and it never really set in with me. I could never remember everything about it. I didn't remember much about the story, I didn't remember much about the characters, but what I did remember was the action. It is breathtakingly beautiful. I love this style of action. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but I love the leaps, literal leaps that are made in this movie with behind the scenes and with whatever they have to do to get this kind of stunt work. It's impressive and always incredible. And watching it again a few months ago, I started to realize that this movie, what makes this movie so great and so memorable, unlike a lot of action films, is that aside from all of the impressive stunts and all the impressive martial arts work that is on display, this is a very deeply rooted drama. The relationships between each of the characters is very well thought out and very well orchestrated so that every single event that takes place in this film, all the events, all the interactions, the relationships between the characters change, the dynamics change. There is a lot of mystery in this movie, especially with the hunt to figure out who the thief is that has stolen the Green Destiny sword. And dynamics between characters change, and there's almost like this unspoken level of respect that changes too, with exception to the villain character who has like no respect for anyone in this movie, and I love how that character handles just their evilness, the actions that take place in this movie in terms of how characters are killed, how people go about their fighting. You understand that each person in this movie has a different style to how they go about things. And that's something that I love so much with action films, from the detail of that, of how this person conducts themselves, the personality of the person, and their actions and their skill levels when it comes to fighting or when it comes to their possessions, how that seeps through into their character. There's a brilliant scene where we figure out the discovery of who might be the thief. And it's something that I think is just a brilliant little reveal scene. It's handled so well, and there is so much depth in it, although it's just a simple little thing. Again, Ang Lee is such a good director when it comes to handling little moments like that, the little nuances in scenes. He does such a great job with giving them a level of weight, but never bashing you over the head with obviousness. You feel as if you are discovering something, and you feel it's guiding you. This movie is guiding you towards a destination. It's never too heavy or too complex, and that's something that I really love with this movie. And seeing it down the road, I think I'm going to love it more for its drama than I will for its action, although the action is, of course, spectacular. So, if you haven't seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I highly recommend it. Number 9 on my list is Edge of Tomorrow. This was one of those movies that we had heard about, my family and I, we'd heard about it, and the thing that we saw and the thing that we all love as a family is Tom Cruise. We're just like, oh my goodness, Tom Cruise is in a movie? Okay, well great. Let's check it out. And I didn't realize, seeing this at first, just how good of a film this was. Especially because I wasn't exploring cinema as much as I was. That was around the time where I was beginning to really dissect and analyze movies and scenes and characters. And what I love so much about Edge of Tomorrow is how it also kind of plays into Tom Cruise, for one thing, in his persona in Hollywood, because he's a genuine movie star working today. Like, there's not a lot of movie stars that we have in terms of like the action stars that existed in like the 1980s. We don't have stars like that where people can just go, like average people can just go, that person's great for this, that person's great for this. Tom Cruise is one of those stars that people can latch on to, and that he can still pull people to theaters because of his star power. And Edge of Tomorrow, although it wasn't a huge financial success, I think does a great job at showing off Tom Cruise's persona at first as being the charismatic guy, and then playing it against type, and him playing the coward later on, and then we have to learn to care and respect this individual, because he starts off in just the most scummy of places as a military, just a guy as a press guy, and then he slowly becomes a warrior and someone you can respect and care about. And this is one of those movies when I discovered what the film was about in terms of someone who cannot die, but when they do die, somebody that dies and then reverses back to the previous day. I was always concerned about stuff like that, especially like when it comes to this movie or concepts like that, or like especially with like Deadpool or something, a character that cannot necessarily be killed. I always have a hard time empathizing or caring about that person throughout the film. And this movie has such a great twist with that setup about what exactly the benefits and the and the restrictions are. Not even just the restrictions, but the hardships that someone has to go through when you're living a life on repeated times, because you know that the reason that he's going through this again is because he is dying, and he's dying in harsh ways because this is a war zone. And this is one of those films that when I see it, I'm just like, my goodness, it's just bogging down. It's weighing down on you. You want success out of this movie with all the characters. And you start to care for characters you didn't care about before. And that's something that I commend any film for doing. One of the things I also really like about this movie is Emily Blunt's character with Tom Cruise. There is a relationship that develops between them. And at first it's just a relationship of respect and understanding. And it's the kind of relationship you want to develop into a more romantic relationship. It isn't just, oh, I think you're attractive, let's meet up and let's hook up. And like, there is a genuine level of respect found with each other, with each of the characters, and she knows what he's going through, so she understands that the more information he has, the more he's living through this, even though it's just the same day for her, which is also a really good addition to this movie. And I love how it ends. The ending was perfect for me, because I'm like, all right, now what do we do? Well, what do you say? What do you do now? Great motivations and tremendous progression throughout the rest of the film. It's never boring. I highly recommend this one as well. Number 8 is Hero. This movie was a movie that I stumbled on, and I didn't know anything about it really. I knew about the color design. I knew about the backgrounds, and I'd seen clips of it. And every time I saw those clips, I'm like, what movie is this from? I need to see this movie. And I bought it, and I saw it, and it blew me away. But not just for the reasons I thought. It blew me away because of, again, the character relationships, who every character is. That's one thing that I'm always a sucker for. I'm always a sucker for good character relationships and how people play off of each other. My favorite thing in this movie is Jet Li's interactions with, I think it's the general or the warlord in China who's trying to bring China together. Their scenes together are so tense, but so rewarding. You realize, like, he has to progress, basically. When he tells him part of the story that he likes, he's like, has to be like 100 yards away from him. And every time he tells a part of the story he likes, then he gets to progress a few more yards, and he gets more money and more gold for his duties after every time. And then there is something that happens in this interaction that I did not expect. I expected this to be Jet Li's hero film. Like, he's it's literally called Hero, so I'm like, okay, he's gonna be the hero of this movie and fight off bad guys and blah blah blah, and that's gonna be it. It's gonna be boring, blah. There is actually two main stories going on in this, and one of them doesn't involve Jet Li much of it all, and it's got more focus in the main story. And what I love about it is the heart of this film. Jet Li is more of, his part in the film is more the style, the action, kind of like this presence that you just see him and you're like, oh my goodness, that's Jet Li, and like, what is he gonna do? And he's more of the intelligent part. He's kind of like the discovery vehicle, the part where you're kind of like, you're set in this idea of what you think the truth is, and then the movie just kind of unravels this really complicated and confusing stories. Like, you're like, wait, what's real, what's fake? And the colors have to do with that. They have some depth to them, or not depth, but they have some significance to every story that is told in this movie. And I don't know exactly what it is, but you at least know that there is a separation, so you're never confused about what story you're focusing on. Every color can be identified with a certain truth or a certain story, and I love that. My favorite part in this movie was actually the first fight between Donnie Yen and Jet Li. I love Donnie Yen so much. He's one of my favorite foreign actors when it comes to just doing stuff. He's just fantastic. And seeing them work in this amazing fight scene. Like, I love Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon's fight scenes, but this fight scene was music to me. Like, just beautiful and well orchestrated and just mind-blowing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and at the same time I could. And I was just like, my goodness. And then they call back to it later. And then you really reconsider things. I can't say much about it because it's one of those movies that you need to see it. Because the imagery is strong, the character journeys are strong, every story that is told in this movie is amazing. And what's great is it's not an art film that is so far-reaching an audience, like a general audience. If you are not into movies like, I don't know, like The Thin Red Line, or movies that are like so artistic and so like movies that people consider are pretentious, maybe, I don't know. If you don't like those movies, go to this film, because this is one of those movies that is so accessible in its art form that people can watch it and witness it and care about it without feeling like they are too dumb, because it's not trying to talk down to you, which is something I love, especially from art films. And this is also a great film to be introduced to when it comes to foreign films too. I know that's another path that people feel like it's hard to take, but it's not with this movie. Trust me, it is well worth your time, and it's well worth your dollar. If you ever see it in the dollar bin, or if you just see it on a video store shelf, I recommend that you buy this film for sure. Number 7 is John Wick. When this movie was coming out, I was excited, but not too excited. The advertising that was always present was Keanu Reeves' best performance since The Matrix. It was selling Keanu Reeves, and I'm not a huge Keanu Reeves fan. In fact, I'm not a huge Matrix fan. The more I watch that movie, the more I'm like, okay, when I was a kid, this was deep, this was interesting, this was like, oh my gosh, what does it mean, what does it symbolize? And the more I watch it, the more I realize there's impressive things that it did, but it was not one of those movies that lasts very long, at least in terms of, I can't see it being someone's film where they're just like, oh my gosh, that is just like the perfect movie, it's excellent, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it deserves all this praise, because the symbolism, the subtext, everything in that movie, it just, nah, that's a Matrix rant. I'm sorry, I'm just not a huge Matrix fan. I like it, it's good, I'm not as big a fan of it as I was before. So seeing the advertising, I was a little concerned. Not concerned, but I was a little wary. I didn't see it in theaters, I waited, and then my family saw it. My mom and my brothers, they saw it, and they said it was great. And I was like, okay, well, let's check it out. I'm always concerned when people give me recommendations, especially when it's my family, because they have different tastes than I do. So I was like, okay, whatever. And watching this movie, I was thrown off. It's much darker than I was expecting. It's much more intelligent than I was expecting. It's a world. This is one of my favorite things with action movies and any movie. Well, particularly action films or genre films, where there is a world that is beyond our own. And it's something that exists in this movie only. I love the world of John Wick in it's like a background, but it's not necessarily a full-on character, but it's a background that serves the character. It's like something in the underbelly of our world that we're like, oh, okay, yeah, this exists, and I buy it. Like, I can understand how John Wick could be so successful in this world, and what retiring from it really means. His motivation, one of the best motivations to a single character I've ever seen in any action movie. And John Wick is a fantastic film, and I think it's Keanu Reeves' best performance, if I'm being completely honest, because he has such dedication to the craft of giving a genuine performance, like Tom Cruise and like Harrison Ford in his early days, when it came to just being on screen and acting and performing and showing us stunts and showing us things that we deserve as an audience to see. It was never just, I'm a star and I'm beyond this. He actually cares. And I love that. And I love the supporting cast in this movie. I don't think I've been as emotionally shaken as I was at one point. And when the movie progressed, I'm just like, yeah, get him, John. Get him. Because it just feels like there's a level of satisfaction in this movie for the events that have taken place that has stripped John away of any chance of leaving this world. I can't recommend this one enough. If I can just say one scene in particular, I would say the nightclub scene in this movie is just incredible. Just fantastic. So, definitely give that one a watch. Number 6 is Casino Royale, the only James Bond film to make this list. Skyfall was a close honorable mention, and another film that is not too action-heavy that I actually love. There's Goldfinger, which I highly recommend of all the classic Bond films. And I'm also a big fan of The Man with the Golden Gun, just because of Scaramanga. Christopher Lee is a delightful villain in that movie. Casino Royale, for me, though, was one of those movies I saw a lot of people say, this movie is the best James Bond film. And I'm like, okay, well, sure. Came out in 2000, and I think it was 2006. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, we got time on it. We got better camera work. We got better, I guess, actors. We got better stuff. So sure, I mean, we can say that the newest entry is always the best entry. So sure, let's just say that. No, seeing it, I'm convinced. This is one of the best James Bond films in terms of getting the action down, getting the origin of James Bond in terms of having us learn and develop him and figure out just who he is before he becomes a cold-blooded killer. Like, he's got some humanity to him in this movie, which I love. This movie nails supporting characters and the villain. Le Chiffre in this film, phenomenal. Phenomenal. The performance is incredible, and poker is one of those games I just love seeing in movies when it's done right, and this is one of those films where when I'm watching the poker games just take place, I'm like, oh no, oh my gosh, oh yes, he did it. And it's just, and they add so much behind that too. Like, there's so much going on behind the game that you're not just watching the game for like 30 minutes and then you're just like, that's the scene. No, you watch the game for a bit, take a break, something big happens. Watch the game, take a break, something big happens. You're watching the game, oh no, something interrupted the game, and now something really big is happening, and we gotta get back to it right now. Oh no, the game's going on. Oh my gosh. So much is infused with this setting that they picked. And I wouldn't say I side so much with Le Chiffre, but I understand him. I empathize with his situation. I don't side with him too much. in terms of him winning. With a lot of movies like, the Rocky franchise, sometimes you will side with the villain or the antagonist and want them to succeed. I don't do that with him, but I definitely empathize with him. Daniel Craig gives a very good performance as well. And I love, her name is escaping me, but Vesper in this movie is so good. She is such a phenomenal actress, and she does such a good job of giving depth to this character who just could, I've heard from the book, is nothing but a one-dimensional character. She is so good in this movie. And this has one of my favorite opening scenes of any action film, with him earning his 00 status. And there's so much in this movie that I can't talk about, because me just talking about it doesn't do it justice. Check it out. Number 5 is Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2. For a long time, Volume 2 was my favorite of the entries, and Volume 1 was behind that. Now I put them together. I don't put one ahead of the other. I always thought that Volume 2 did things that, Volume 1 didn't, and then watching again. I think I talked about this in my discussion with my cousin, Quentin Tarantino, where I was like, I thought that they open almost exactly the same, where it's like, you are told, oh, she's already done stuff in this movie, and now we're going to the end, but now we're going to see what she did beforehand. So, okay, well, so I guess we're kind of spoiled in that sense, but, whatever. The thing is that it goes beyond that spoiler. It goes beyond just knowing that she won, because she never flawlessly wins. There's so much hero suffering in this movie. From the emotional suffering of just realizing you've been murdered and your baby is gone and no chance of a happy life for you is possible. There are 3 scenes in this movie where Uma Thurman gives me the chills, where 2 of them, one of them is a spoiler, so I won't tell it. It just has to do in Volume 2. You know what it is. It involves a very heavy zoom. Gives me chills. But one scene in particular in the first film is when she wakes up in the hospital. I get very unnerved with that scene because of what it means, because of what she's going through, what she's feeling. It's hard for her, and it's hard to watch. And then in Volume 2, it happens when she is shot with a dart. That's just a really good way of performing. It's not just like, my lines say this, I have to tell the truth, I have to do this. It's like, I am going to play this character going through those situations. And I have so much respect for Uma Thurman in this movie. And her stunt double, I believe it's Zoe, I forget her last name, but she's Zoe, and she's now a predominant figure in some of Quentin Tarantino's films, specifically Death Proof, where she is phenomenal. I have so much respect for the stunt cast of all the films I've mentioned before, and to continue, but in this movie, I'm going to take a little moment just to say thank you to the stunt people, especially the people who played the Crazy 88. Why are they called the Crazy 8? Watch the movies and find out. It's perfect. This is a very funny film, both of them. They are very funny, but they're also very insightful. I love learning about the members of the deadly assassin squad. Forget its name. Darn it, I gotta watch this movie again very soon. But I love watching these characters because I care about all of them. I love seeing these people play off of each other, fight each other, especially Lucy Liu. Oh, man, her scene with Uma Thurman is just, it's violent poetry. I love it. I love it so much. And I find her so evil in that scene. I love also seeing the opening of the first movie when we're in the home and then we see these 2 fighting. Now, in that opening, we understand the issues at play. She is fighting for something that we're not clear on. We understand there's a lot of resentment for these individuals for what has happened, and she died a violent death. I love also how it's difficult for her to kill these people because she had such a close relationship, and we can tell she had a close relationship with all of them. And that's hard to do with an action film? How do you make it so that you empathize with your villains, but you don't side with them too much over your protagonist? You never want the protagonist to be hated by your audience. Uma Thurman's situation is so understandable, and we want to make sure that she gets her vengeance, but we understand that what she's going through is a very difficult thing. And we don't shy away from that. This is an extremely violent movie. All the scenes are violent, and I love how it's handled. The restrictions that Tarantino had, especially with the Crazy 88 scene, how he makes that scene watchable, at least in terms of the theatrical version. I've heard that there's the whole Bloody Affair version where it's not censored. I prefer it censored because, one, it adds a little bit of style I like, and two, it's so the audience fills in the color, which is so great. Like, the colors stand out in this movie, and you can just fill it in. This is one of those movies I've praised it a lot in my Tarantino discussion with my cousin. Please check that out. And I will say this. Uma Thurman, somebody else I will mention, Uma Thurman gives one of the best performances by an action hero that I've seen. Number 4 is Die Hard. I watched this movie when I was 14 or 15. 14. And my brother also watched it with me, and he was 12. No, he was 11. I watched this movie on Christmas. At Christmas time with my younger brother, and I was so mad because I'm like, you're letting him watch this movie? I wanted to watch this movie years ago. You wouldn't let me watch it? Now you're letting him watch it when he's 11? It's not fair being the oldest. Die Hard is a phenomenal film. I love Bruce Willis's performance in this movie. I love how charming he makes John McClane. I've never seen John McClane as really much of a jerk or an a-hole as much as everybody else, but I understand it. Like, he's somebody who I can understand where he's coming from in his, or where that thought process comes from. Like, he wants his wife back, but he also doesn't seem to care too much about her own financial situation. He definitely wants something for himself. He wants her and the family back. Like, there's a reason he stayed in New York. But that's not something that is told to you. That is something that the audience is allowed to infer and interpret. And I really respect this movie. Of all the action films that have come and gone from the 80s, this is the movie that, for me, I can watch all the time and care about it just as much. What I love so much about this movie is how the stakes are heightened throughout. It's a simple building scenario. It's a building heist. It's just, you're stuck in this building, how do you get out of it? And what's worse is he gets thrown out. He's not there to save the building at first. He's just there to attend the Christmas party. And then the worst villain comes through. He's thought this whole process out, but didn't consider the New York cop coming in and cleaning up the place. I love that little detail so much. Alan Rickman is one of the quintessential villains of cinema, without a doubt. Hans Gruber is one of the best characters, and it's a character with very little depth to him. He's just a thief. But Alan Rickman brings this charisma, this charm, this confidence, this coldness that I just love. And this joy. He loves what he's doing. And it's a movie that, when you watch it, you can just care about it. You care about these people. You care about John McClane. They're not just characters. They feel like people. The police cop outside that's always talking to John, just the nicest guy, the best guy. The principal from the Breakfast Club. He's on the phone and he's like trying to talk to John and he's like being just a jerk, and I'm just like, no, you don't talk to John McClane like that, you jerk. That guy is a hero right now. You get out of here, you 80s authority figure. Get out of here. And I love the two FBI agents, which is just like, there's no relation. It's like, Okay, proceed. Sure, go along with it. I am 100% on board. And I love John's wife in this movie too. She's not just the female character, the female object that the hero has to go after. She actually has a purpose. And I think this is the performance. This movie it could have been so basic. Like, there's so many just basic elements thrown in, but it's the performances and the direction and all the things that make a great film that has made this film last and has become people's favorite action film. There's a reason that so many people go to defend this movie and love it so much. And I think the performances are just a small thing, but they are so detrimental. They are so significant to this film. They need to be in there. Otherwise, the film just falls flat. And what else can you say? It's just the perfect action film if you're just going into it for, like, joy. It's a Christmas movie. I'm sick of people saying, very quickly, I'm sick of people saying this isn't a Christmas movie, okay? This movie is, because why is John in the building? He's not there just visiting his wife. No, he's going there for Christmas, to celebrate Christmas with his family. Everybody's there because it's the Christmas party. You can't say this isn't a Christmas movie. There are still people that say it is, that it is not a Christmas movie, and they're wrong. I don't normally like to say to people that they're wrong about something. I give anyone license to say that if you're in your personal life, your private life, if anybody says that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, you have my permission, the permission of a 19-year-old YouTube movie fan, to say you are wrong. Because they are. It feels pretty darn good to say that, finally. Whew!